What's happening, everybody? So I'm thinking of changing the name of the podcast. I'm not real sure. But for now, this could be the very last Warrior Poet Project podcast.
Oh, wow.
Last one?
I mean, it's going to be the same podcast. It's just going to have a different name. I like changing my name. You know, I used to be Chris. Now I'm Aubrey. You know, used to be Warrior Poet Podcast. Now it could be something else.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. So we could change it up. But don't worry. It's going to be the same shit regardless. We're here today with two individuals who I've known from a vastly different world, who now found themselves in a candlelit environment about to talk about ayahuasca. These gentlemen here from Barbell Shrugged. What's up? Welcome, Mike and Doug. How you guys doing?
What's going on, Aubrey?
So you guys just got back from Peru. I mean, that's some shit that I do.
We
just got back from Peru.
Got back. Fresh.
Our flight arrived at like 11 or 12 today, and then we immediately we went to the hotel, washed up, went over to Paleo FX, and then talked about plant medicines.
And now here you are again talking about it.
Yeah, I have
like
a
that
feeling
stuff.
we're going to be talking about it a lot this weekend, maybe forever. So, yeah.
It tends to come up.
We're in the fitness industry, and we kind of feel some gravitational pull in
That's
that
great.
direction.
So, and that's how most of these things start. They start with a calling. You know, you guys, I remember you were talking to me about it a year ago or something like that.
Yeah.
Just like a little bit, kind of dipping your toe in it, and then that started the calling, and the calling got stronger, and obviously at a certain point you guys decided to answer the calling and head down.
Yeah, last time we were here, I probably hadn't had almost any experience with it, and that has completely fucking changed.
Yeah.
In the last year. Yeah, we just went to Peru. We were gone for 10 days, and we did one in San Pedro and 2 ayahuasca ceremonies,
Nice.
which were undescribable, like incredible.
But we'll attempt to do it, I'm sure.
We will attempt it. We've already done it once today.
The mission of the initiative is to describe the ineffable, as Don Howard used to say. Like, how do you describe it? But you end up doing it. You get close enough, at least, as close as the words will allow.
Yeah, but you hear other people describe it, and it sets you up.
Right.
And you're like, all right, I'm not going to have any expectations, but you do.
Of course, of course.
And then you get humbled. Yeah.
That's definitely a tendency of the plants. They've been around a long time, and if you come in there all cocksure, like, yeah, I got this. That's actually how I came to the last set of ceremonies. It was my 8th ceremony of ayahuasca, and I'd done a lot of the plants. I was like, man, I got this. Oh no, I had nothing.
Yeah.
The
other plants don't prepare you at all. They'll give you enough confidence to go in, but that's the only thing they do for you.
You never know. The plants have their way about them. So, all right, so take us through. You get down, and you guys got to do it in the mountains, which I'm totally a little bit jealous of. Jungle's beautiful. I love the jungle. Mad love for the jungle. It's like paying the mother a house call, but the mountains suit me way better.
Yeah. It was beautiful.
It was so beautiful. We're in the Sacred
Valley
Valley of Peru. Andes Mountains, one of those most beautiful mountains in the world in the distance, and especially for the San Pedro ceremony. Like, it's a long all-day ceremony.
Of San Pedro. Yeah.
So what?
That's the home. You know, that's where that medicine comes from. Comes from Sacred Valley. Comes from the high deserts.
Yeah. So because it was such a long, dare I say, peaceful ceremony, like it wasn't nearly as intense as ayahuasca. It's long and it's pretty light. You still get a lot of profound realizations, but really, I was just kind of hanging out all day, just staring at the beauty of the mountains and just soaking in my life.
Yeah, so San Pedro, a lot of people have heard me talk about it, refer to it as Wachuma, because that was the original name of the cactus and the process. And then the Catholics came, and because it opens up your heart in such a way that you feel amazing, they called it San Pedro, because St. Peter guards the pearly gates. So that cactus is guarding the pearly gates, and when you go and experience it, you're in the place of heaven, and that's why the Catholics named it San Pedro, and that's kind of the common name. So you did that ceremony first?
That was I think they did it intentionally first to kind of just prep us
Take
for
the edge
ayahuasca. That's right.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people there, we went with a group of 10 people, and there was a few people that had very little experience with any plant medicine. So I think there was kind of like this was just a way to ease them into the intensity of the ayahuasca. But yeah, it was the first ceremony that we did for sure. And actually, yours wasn't intense at all, but yours was even less so.
Yeah, I definitely didn't get enough of the medicine. Because what other people were describing, I wouldn't say I was disappointed because I still learned a lesson, you know, and that's why you're there. But a lot of what I didn't get as much of a powerful experience as a lot of the others got.
Sure.
So I definitely need to go for a second round of Wachuma just to really get the full benefit of it. And I feel like, for whatever reason, I mean, there's a reason why. I'm not really sure why. Maybe it'll reveal itself at some point. But I didn't. There was a lot of. I think the benefit for me was sitting there in ceremony. Like the ceremony was what was important. But the typical feelings I get with plant medicines were not there.
Right.
So. But I didn't have as much, and I had a hard time keeping it down. It's not easy to keep down.
It depends. It depends on the preparation. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, what's really difficult on the digestive system is how much of the fiber from the cactus actually remains in the brew, and if you decoct it down and you actually isolate, the different components of the plant, it can get easier. We were fortunate enough to be with one of the last great Wachumeros, which is Don Howard, and that was really special because he has a special medicine that's different than any other medicine out there. And there's a couple other people who are on the edge of kind of figuring some things out that I've been kind of introduced to, but it's a lost art. It actually started in this place called Chavin, which was before, BC, like 500 BC was when it was flourishing. And they actually archaeologically show a period of 800 years of peace when Chavin was flourishing, because they would provide Wachuma ceremonies for the masses, for anybody who would come in the area. So anybody with disagreements, everybody else, they just drink the Wachuma. And it's one of the only times and places in our barbaric history where there weren't weapons being made, fortresses being built. Everything was like chill.
Yeah.
For a little while. And it was based around the ceremonies of Wachuma, which is they call it heart opening. And what that means really on a neurochemical level is it's a serotonin boosting substance as well.
We should have all our business meetings on Wachuma.
Man, that would solve some shit. Although everybody like, no, man, you take more. Like, no, you take more. But eventually, you'd end up figuring it out. But that medicine, when done, to its highest level, is really, really potent as well. Different lessons. It was as valuable to me as the ayahuasca. The first is this amazing expansion and a revelation of how beautiful the world is, and this almost giddy laughing and playing, and then it gets into these subterranean visionary states, and then really you can have an opportunity at the end to really lock into like a community and the people you're with. It feels like tribe, but it's its own kind of little ball game.
I definitely need to take a second swing at it.
Sure.
And so
if you want to do that, go for a Wachumero. Like go to like the highest level. It sounds like you did that with the ayahuasca. Like you got like a
our ayahuasquero, he had been specializing in that, and for so long he's I believe one of the finest ayahuasqueros down there. And then I think he took on the Wachuma years ago because he also found a lot of benefit to it, but I don't think he has as much experience with that.
There's very few who have the old ancient way.
Right.
Like the ayahuasca tradition is largely unbroken because it's passed down from grandfather to grandson for thousands of years. People know that game really well. It stayed, it didn't get broken up because the Spanish didn't want to go to the heart of the jungle. So they're like, fuck it, we'll leave them doing their business. We're not going in there.
Right.
It's scary as shit in there. They're fucking wizards and there's jaguars and people with blow darts, and we can't find anything, and our armor is rusting. Like, fuck it, we're out. Yeah. So ayahuasca got to stay where it was, whereas the Wachumeros, they were out practicing in really nice areas like you guys were in the mountains. And
right.
Yeah.
So those practices got really interrupted. So that's why that art has been largely lost.
Yeah. I'm with you on it being very heart-opening. Like, there was no profound realizations that I had about, like, the universe, like you might have in some other experiences, but I feel like I spent most of the day just thinking about the people in my life and about how I need to tell them thank you more often and show them more appreciation, and like I can see where they feel misunderstood and it's wearing on their motivation and things like that. And I just remember thinking multiple times, like, I need to call my mom, I need to call my other business partners, I need to call my friends and just say, man, like, I don't tell you thank you often enough for all of, like the shit that I put you through, or like the stuff that I ask you to do and I just expect you to do it, but you don't have to do it, but you do it anyway. Like, it was all very subtle, but it was, I mean, if I just followed through on those thoughts, it could totally change my entire life.
Totally. That's cool. You just needed to double your dose.
Absolutely.
You needed a double Wachuma.
Yeah.
Crack that thing wide open.
Yeah, the next time I'm gonna
go deep.
Well, you took a lot, but you had trouble holding it down, right?
Yeah, I went for a second round, but after I'd purged the first time, it just
Yeah,
it wasn't happening.
We did it. I've done Wachuma with Don Howard like 5 times, and almost nobody purged on his medicine.
I need to go see Don Howard then.
For Wachuma, he's the best. You know,
Oh.
He's one of the last master Wachumeros.
Is that
on the
that's the guy when you guys went down and filmed with, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Gandalf.
Okay.
Yeah, that whole first documentary is on Wachuma. It's on San Pedro.
Yeah,
You
I
have like
watched
40
that.
minutes. Yeah, you did.
Mhm.
Cool. All right, so then got the Wachuma. You know, you got your heart opened up a little bit. You got used to ceremony, and then Madre, Papatua, Ayahuasca.
She fucked me up.
Yeah, so we have some here. We have some here, and we were gonna drink right now.
Oh God.
Just kidding.
Yeah, ayahuasca is not that thing that you. Oh man, you want to do that on Friday night?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh no.
It's not recreational at all. It's just terrifying half the time.
Yeah, I couldn't imagine if someone treating it as a recreational plant medicine.
The funny thing is, like the more you do it, the more repulsive it is, even to watch somebody else do it. Like we're making an ayahuasca documentary now, and to even watch myself drink it, I can't even look at the screen. I just,
Ooh.
it gets really weird. Like the first time you're like, oh, okay, yeah, it wasn't so bad, and then after that it gets pretty rough because you know what it entails, and it's a hell of a cosmic sleigh ride.
That's a good way to describe it.
So tell us about some of your experiences. You know, first one, diving in. What happened? How'd it go?
So I went in with some very. I was starting to tell you out in the lobby is some very surface level. I had like very pinpointed surface level like intentions going in. I almost don't even remember what they were because it seems so ridiculous.
You were a different person then.
Yeah, it seems so ridiculous to if I could go back in time and ask myself, oh, what are your intentions mean? I'd kind of laugh at myself. And that's where like having a good ayahuasquero comes in, a good guide comes in handy. Is they're very wise. They've seen this play out thousands of times.
They've watched this movie.
They've watched gringos come down and have ideas about, oh yeah, I want to optimize and maybe tweak my business.
Yeah.
Like, oh, we're gonna tweak your heart. We're gonna tweak your mind. And I went in with the intent of actually, and this is where people who don't have experience with a guide would be like, oh, kind of taken aback. Was he wanted me to feel the fear of failure, rejection, humiliation, and because if someone would say I feared failure, like if I would ask my friends, hey, do you think I fear failure? They'd say, hell no. I don't fear failure in business. I don't fear failure in athletics, coaching, whatever. But in personal relationships, I do. But I keep myself distracted from that all the time, but I don't know it. And so I was like, okay, yeah. I was like, even the whole day leading up to the ceremony, I was like, I don't know why I'm going to think about fear of failure. It's like he knew something I didn't know about me. And again, I think he's seen this play out many times over. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, all right, well, I'll just do it. And I go in, put my intentions into the cup. I drink the cup of ayahuasca, and then I let it go. And we did 2 ceremonies. First ceremony, there was a lot of resistance. I felt like I was trying to go through a really tiny door. That's what I call it, is going through the tiny door. And I got through the tiny door, and I saw myself as the ayahuasquero had asked me that day. He asked, when the last time you felt like a failure? When was the last time you felt like a failure? I want you, or the first time, as far back as you can go. And I went back to like 19 years old. And it's funny, as earlier that day or the day before, I'd made a comment to somebody about, like, we were talking about salvia. And they were talking about how that can take you back and relive parts of your life. And I was like, oh, I wouldn't want to do that because I have a lot of disappointment in myself, in my life up to this point. So I found myself at 7 years old. I get to the tiny door, and I see myself as a 7-year-old feeling guilty, feeling shame, feeling like I disappointed my parents. And I put that on myself, really.
Sure.
And I got to talk to myself. I was like, hey, Mike, it's okay. You know, you're only 7. You're doing a really good job, by the way. Like, it's, you know, like, and I was the oldest of 5 kids. And so I think I put a lot of what was happening with them on myself as well. But I had a lot of guilt around, and I grew up in the church too. And so I had a lot of guilt around like not being perfect. Mm-hmm. And I saw myself at 7 years old, and I had that conversation with myself, and it was like my 7-year-old self was like not accepting it. So I rewound all the way back to when I was breastfeeding. And I got to I got to see my mom hold me. Mm-hmm. It was the craziest thing.
Yeah.
And then I got to live, I got to go through every point in my life, pretty much to the age of 15 during the journey. And I got to see every point in which I felt like I had disappointed people. And I had felt that shame or guilt, whatever you want to call it. And every time I hit a moment where I had that, I would purge. And it would physically manifest in my body, in different parts of my body. And I would, the first 10 times I purged, after a while you're just dry heaving. It was 90 minutes. Like, everyone commented after this. Everyone's like, Mike can purge like a motherfucker. But every single, the first 10 times I purged, it was shocking to me. Mm-hmm. Because I had physically manifested this problem. And every time I purged it, I had released it. And there was this big relief. And I remember saying out loud, holy shit. I was shocked that it was gone.
Yeah.
I had released it. And I remember I would be on my back, and then all of a sudden I would feel it coming up, and I would hop on my hands and knees, purge into the bucket, and then I would just lay on my side and feel relief.
Yep.
And then the next instance in my life where I felt disappointment would come. And I would have battle every single time. I had battle after battle after battle for hours. And that went into the age of 15. I was trying to clean house. And by the end of all of that, it's I took a big piece of my life and I shoved it into this box. And this was a visual. I shoved it in this box, and this box slammed shut. And then and it's written right after it shuts is religion on top of the box. I was like, what the fuck? I was like, there was so much religion growing up that was creating this shame and the guilt.
Taught you that paradigm.
So what?
It taught you that paradigm.
Right.
The judge paradigm.
Yeah.
And someone is judging you, and you learn, oh, God is judging me. I'm judging me now.
Yeah.
To try and meet these standards, and it flows in through that. It's a subtle distinction that a lot of people don't realize.
Yeah. And the box shut, and then there's complete darkness. And I'm just kind of well, what am I going to do now? I open the box back up, and I go in, and it's I pick the things out. I had an instant integration in that moment where I picked the things out of my life that happened that were good. I got to go experience the good things in my life up to that point, and I got to keep them, the things that still serve me. And I got to take pieces of my life, because what I had done at this point is really box that up and just never thought about it again, which means I got rid of all the good stuff too.
Right.
I was hiding the bad stuff from myself, but that also meant I was hiding the good stuff. So I got to purge all the bad stuff, and then I got to open that box up and pull out all the good things and integrate that into my life now. And I think a lot of that just makes me a more whole person.
For sure.
In the beginning, there were lots of black snakes. Everywhere I looked, there was a fucking snake. I would see a woman. I'd be like, oh, she's attractive, and we'd move closer together, and then her face would become a black snake. I'm like, oh my God, make the snake stop. It was awesome, awesomely terrifying. And by the end of the night, one of the good things that happened, so my father passed away 6 years ago. He committed suicide. And I got to relive the moments, my favorite moments with him in a very real way. And when you don't see someone, when you don't know that suicide is coming, you don't say goodbye. You don't get the chance. And I actually got to relive like all these positive moments with him, all the moments where he expressed love to me. And then I got to tell him that I loved him and say goodbye, and he got to tell me he loved me and say goodbye. And there was such a peace at the end of that and a relief. And that was my biggest regret with him, was there was all those things that I wanted to do that I didn't get to do with him.
Yeah.
And simply just being able to say I love you for the last time was a huge one. And that's pretty much how I closed out the first ceremony.
Well, you just had about the best ayahuasca ceremony you could possibly get. I mean, that is like the classic paradigm case of exactly the type of medicine you're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's exactly what I needed. And the thing is I went down there thinking I was going to tweak to optimize.
Yeah.
And I really cleared up a lot of shit that has probably been fucking me up, and I didn't even know.
Of course. All those programs running under the surface that you can't recognize.
Yeah, got to rewire the system.
And it's cool that you got to make these connections too, because one of the things that you will learn, the more you do it, is these traumas that happen in your life, all of these things that seem psychological or emotional, they have these physical residue in your body.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the reasons that ayahuasca is so powerful, is it undoes things psychically and it undoes things physically. You're like squeezing that out of whatever organ or whatever system it's hiding and purging it. Even sometimes when there's very little fluid coming out, it's like you're purging something out of your body that had been stored in the memory of the fascia or the who knows where it was, but it's somewhere in there and you feel it.
You feel like poison's coming out or damaged tissue. I remember I'd been purging for half an hour. And then there was like this really powerful deep thing that I purged. And then like it felt like there was a lot of solid stuff that came out that was like cancer. It was fucking crazy, man.
Yeah. That's pretty badass, man.
I've got an equally crazy second ceremony, but I'll let Doug talk.
Yeah, jump on in,
because the second ceremony definitely builds on the first, but I'll take a break.
We'll leave him in suspense. So I felt very prepared going in. Our ayahuasquero did a really good job of setting expectations, letting me know that, this is going to be hopefully incredibly powerful and beneficial, but it's not going to be easy at all, which turned out to be more than accurate. It's not fun necessarily.
Trabajo. It's work.
It's work, man. That is exactly what it is. So I felt good going in, knowing that it was going to be rough, at times at least. And so I spent the whole day kind of rehearsing this mantra that worked out very well for me. You said you had a lot of resistance in your experience. I was rehearsing this thing I learned from a guy named Mark Gaffney. You know Mark Gaffney? The equation that he had quoted at one point that I heard from him was that suffering is pain times resistance. So I thought throughout this whole thing, I could be in pain, and that's okay, but I don't have to suffer because if I don't resist it, then I will be fine. I can be in pain, but I won't have to suffer.
Wise.
Yeah. So suffering is pain times resistance, and that's actually really helped me out in a million different areas of life. You could be in an MMA fight and not resist the situation, be present to it. Even if you're getting punched in the face, you don't have to suffer, even if it hurts. You can just be in pain.
Well, that one's easier not to suffer because it forces you to be in the moment. It's these emotional things that are really the case where you're resisting them, and that's what's creating the suffering. Or even when you're about to get sick. Like you think about I'm getting sick. Well, you actually don't feel that bad, but just the fact that you're resisting it so hard makes you fucking miserable. Even though it's like you're about to get a cold, which is like a minimal amount of pain, but the pain you feel is like, and it's resistance. It's exactly right.
Yeah. The physical stuff's always been easier for me than the emotional stuff. Way easier, which is why I think that the work I've been doing lately has been so beneficial, because it's took me into that emotional world and made me work on it. Absolutely forced me to. And so I felt prepared going in. For me, it seemed that the visuals I got, which were powerful, they would track my physical body. So if I felt great, my visuals were very positive. Like I sat up once it started to kick in. I sat up, I threw up, and then it looked like it probably looked like I OD'd. Like I just kind of like my eyes rolled back in my head and I just fell over. And right when I hit the ground, like the angels were flying over to me to like come and take care of me. Thousands of angels. It's all white. I'm in the clouds. The angels are coming over to take care of me because now I feel better. And then once I was once I was starting to feel like I was going to throw up again, the angels were pushed aside, and then, like you said, the fucking snakes would show back up, the alligators, the dragons. It was mostly reptiles, big sharp teeth, and they would come over really close to me, thousands of them. They would try to intimidate me, and I would have to just sit there and just like remember not to resist. Like, it's painful, it's scary, but don't resist. So it was like this heaven and hell back and forth battle, where when I felt good, I was in heaven, and when I felt bad and I was going to throw up, I was instantly in hell. At some points, like, very overwhelmed, where I literally thought I was dying. Like, I quote unquote knew that I wasn't logically, but like I felt like I was dying.
Did you accept it when you got that feeling?
A couple times, no. Like when I got to the peak of it, I was like, I was having a lot of trouble not resisting that. And but again, they had told us that you might feel at some point like you were dying. So at least I was aware that that was a possibility. Little deaths.
That's what ayahuasca brings. Many little deaths.
Which, speaking of deaths, is the whole point of this story. So, right about the time that I was kind of over being in this experience, like I was having some rough points, and I was thinking to myself, you're lucky to have been able to come down here and have this experience. I kind of get it. Now I know what people are talking about. That's really cool, but I'm ready to be done because this is fucking overwhelming. And then I kind of caught myself. And I was like, you know what? Like, you're always trying to rush through things. You're always like, I value speed over almost anything. I'm always trying to get to the next thing, get it done. And that's like the whole point of doing psychedelics, is where you can just be present, not try to just get things done and get to the next thing, but to like embrace the situation or the experience that you're in and enjoy it, right? And so I convinced myself that nothing lasts forever. It'll be done in a little bit. Just enjoy it while you're there, and then you can move on when the time comes. And right as I said, nothing lasts forever, my visuals, it's all black. I got my eyes closed, and it's almost like as if I was looking up into the stars, little white dots that are kind of sparkling, gleaming like stars in the sky, and they were forming this figure of a man, these little white dots, and he's almost like a godlike figure, and he turns to me and he says, "That's right, nothing lasts forever. Not even your wife and kid." And he turns to my wife and kid, he grabs them, and he casts them out into the distance as if he's ascending them into heaven, right? And at this point, I'm realizing that I'm watching my son, my newborn son, who's less than 2 months old, and my wife of less than 2 years, they're dying right in front of me. And I'm having the emotional experience of what that would be like if they were to die right in front of me, like they got hit by a bus. And logically, I knew that they weren't dying. Like, I knew they weren't dead. I knew I was in this experience. But emotionally, I was having the experience of what it would be like if they did die. And so I'm watching them float off into the distance, and I'm crying like I'm having an exorcism. I'm crying so hard. I'm gritting my teeth. I have veins in my neck, and you can see the tendons in my neck, and I'm just like open to the experience, and I'm crying so hard. I've never cried like this before. Watching my wife and kid die. And right about the time they were off into the distance and they were about to disappear, they were almost microscopic, this apparent godlike figure turns to me and he says, "But they're not dead yet. They're not actually dead." And all the color came back into this black scene. It just came back in like rainbows, like just all the color came back in, like it's a celebration. And this godlike figure starts like scolding me. He's like, "They're not dead yet. But if they did die, you would regret so many times when you could have hung out with them, and you could have showered them with love, and you could have appreciated them, and you could have made their life better, and you didn't. And you did something else, and you would have regretted that. But from this point forward, you won't forget this situation. From this point forward, you will spend every single possible second of your life with them, showering them with love, showing them appreciation, showing them, feeling gratitude that they're there, not taking them for granted." And I was just hit by this intense moment where I actually felt what it would be like if they did die, and all the regret that I would have had. And now I get to live the rest of my life having felt that experience, not just logically knowing if they died I would be upset. That's different. Like, logic doesn't play here. I got to feel what it would be like. And now I get a second chance. Like, they did die, but just joking, they didn't die. I get to live the rest of my life knowing what that would be like.
What a great
and
gift.
It's a second chance that, how would you get it any other way without something absolutely horrible having to happen?
Right.
It's
the near-death experience that didn't have to actually happen,
right,
and didn't have the risk of actual death. You know, I had a recent, and that's a lesson that you may need to tune up in that lesson, and it may come in a slightly different way, because I've had similar things, but recently in a ceremony that I had, I experienced something similar in which I was realizing that every aspect of creation, everything that is created, has with it inherently its own death. So every life inherently contains its own death. That is the destination. So everything that you see, everything that's created, every actual thing will be dust at some point. It will be reduced to its base particles. And so looking at life like it's almost like you're celebrating a constant funeral. So at that point I got to really celebrate my own death. But it was a funeral, and it was a celebration. It was like I realized that I'm already dead.
Yeah.
Like I'm dead. Because I was created, I'm dead also. Right. Well, at least this manifestation of me, whatever happens in the astral beyond, in the light body, whatever, that can be its own thing. But anything in this, so myself and Whitney and my family, and they were all dead. They were all already dead because they were created, and life inherently contains death. And I was, again, you have that, you have those tears of how much you appreciate it, how much, God, I fucking love life and me. I'm alive for now, but I'm going to die. So let's fucking celebrate. And I think that's something that's really fucked up about the funeral paradigm that we have in our culture, is like everybody's supposed to wear black and mourn and be sad. Like we should constantly be living that funeral and in a celebration. And then when it actually comes, it should be a celebration beyond anything else that we've ever experienced. Like, hell yeah, this thing existed. It got born into existence. And as you found with your father, once something is born into existence, you can find it again in other places. And I've found that many times with my grandmother and many other different people. Some aspect of them, after they've been here and been created, will always exist, which is fucking badass.
So when you die, what do you want your funeral to look like? What do you want the people to be doing?
Man, I want it to be a celebration of everything that I really love. What do I love? I love dancing. I love working out and competing.
I want the playlist.
I want I want people taking ayahuasca. I want it full on out. You want to know about Aubrey's life? Here's 2 weeks. And do all the shit that he loved, eat great, do ceremony, play, have sex, work out, compete, just fucking have a little taste of what it was to, what this manifestation of a force here on Earth was while it existed. That would be the way to do it.
Yeah.
Because I'm gonna exist in some other form or another. It's nothing to mourn, So celebrate how it was translated in this 3-dimensional space that we got to experience. That's the way to do it. And that's only night 1 for you guys. This is awesome. I hear a lot of stories, and it's that was pretty cool.
Well, it's funny. We're down there with 10 people, and I was one of the last people to share for the integration session the next day. And I think having an integration session the next day is extremely important. And I heard other people's stories, and then I was one of the last people to go, and I was like, shit. The first thing I said was by the way, I covered a lot of ground. So they were and then they were okay, whatever. And then I told that, and they were shit, you did cover a lot of ground. Yeah. It
comes when you're ready, and a lot of people have a lot of expectations, and they get frustrated with that. And we mentioned that outside a little bit, but whatever you need, it'll come when you're ready.
Yeah.
When you're ready to take those steps, when you're ready to not resist, when you're ready to open that box back up, and you're ready to take these. There's an act of free will in all of this stuff. When you're ready to accept, this death, a lot of times people think it just totally happens to you. It does in some way. It'll lead you, but there's always a place where you can decide.
Yeah.
And decide, because it gives you free will is this thread that runs through everything else. When you dematerialize everything else, free will is something that never leaves, and it actually gets stronger. The deeper the layer of the onion you go.
Oh, yeah.
And so that's something that's really, really sacred that we have. It's free will and time. It's you can't avoid those for very long. You can get rid of them for a minute and distort them a little bit, but ultimately they're going to remain. So night 2, let's jump in. Let's see what else the plan had in store.
Oh, geez. Night 2. Night 2 is I experienced more resistance on night 2 than I did on night 1, which was really surprising because I knew what to expect, and maybe that's why. It's I knew the potential. As soon as night 1 was done, I was thinking, I don't want to do this again. But by noon the next day, when we were going to do it again, it was obvious that I was ready to go again, because I knew that there was more to uncover, more to learn. And, I was reminded over and over again, your second, no experience is ever the same. It's always going to be completely different. Yep. And I was still like, oh man, I don't know if I want to do the snakes again. I don't know. It was like all that stuff. And the second time I went in, I felt like there was somebody guiding me the whole time, and like someone holding me.
Male or female?
It was.
Sometimes they don't. It's hard to tell, but sometimes it's really distinct.
It's hard to say. No, it wasn't a distinct thing.
Yeah.
But it wasn't. It was like I'd never been held by this entity before, and it wasn't physically at all.
Sure.
And I remember kind of trying to go through that small door again. I'm trying to go through that small door. I'm like, how am I going to get through this door? And then there's me trying to get through this door, and then there's another me, like standing there with my arms crossed, shaking my head no. I was like, I actually visually got to see me resisting. It was like me going, nope, not doing it. The last time we did this, it was not enjoyable one bit. And then there's another me, which is like me, going, hey, dude, stop resisting. You know that you're causing all this suffering right now? Like, it was like this conversation I'm having with, there's like three of me. And I'm having this conversation, and I finally, during this conversation, this is peaking really hard. And it's this really deep struggle. And all of a sudden, I'm like, I have got to get outside. It was overwhelming. I get up on my hands and knees, because after the first night, we implemented a you can't stand up rule, because some dude took a face plant into the center of the room.
Whoops.
Yeah. Love you, Keith. He got a couple stitches, like the first person that ever got hurt during a ceremony.
Oh, shit.
Only because he was just standing there for whatever.
Yeah.
So I crawl over, and I'm like, outside. Get me fucking outside. And one of the guys helped me get outside, and I had to catch my breath. And I was overwhelmed. And once I caught my breath, and I spent some time outside, and the music was so powerful. And that was part of getting outside.
The Icaros they play can magnify the intensity to a level that it's a 5 times, 10 times, 20 times, 100 times multiple, depending.
Absolutely.
A skilled shaman can take it up with that environment. So getting outside is like, whoa, my voltage is exceeding my capacitor at this point.
Certain songs,
and so you can release that. Yeah.
Certain songs, it was like the song would come on, and I go, oh, here we go again.
I wish I had a chicapa in here to really bring me out.
Freak me out right now. There's one Peruvian guitar song, or it's almost like a ukulele or something like that. Really, it felt like it was pulling me out of me. So I get through this. I finally get outside, and I get through this really tiny door, and I find myself thinking about spirituality, and it was the first time, I intellectualized spirituality is what I was doing. And I was thinking about spiritual things. Here we go.
Don't mind this.
You're going to make me freak out.
Don't mind this.
Back. So I'm trying to think about spirituality, and I'm trying to rationalize it. And I'm really pulling my rational mind around this spirituality thing. And there's this struggle. I end up looping, is kind of what we had called it. It was like when I'm trying to rationalize something that you can't rationalize.
Right.
And I end up trying to rationalize my rationalizations, and I end up in this really furious loop. And then all of a sudden,
showing you the failure of words, the failure of the mind.
Yeah.
Grasp
It's like,
these
look, man,
concepts.
you don't have to understand everything.
Yeah. Just experience it.
It's like this little gnome guy pops up out of
Oh,
nowhere.
the little gnome guy. Good.
It's a friend of his.
Yeah.
You know the gnome guy? Yeah.
Yeah, lots of them.
Yeah,
The little doctors, the little gnomes.
So he pops up, and he's like, hey, come over here. And I look directly at him, and he disappears.
Oh, they're always tricky, those little gnome
Yeah,
guys.
that's fucking gnomes, man. So I'm trying to find this guy, and all of a sudden, he unzips this veil, it's dark, it's black. He unzips and kind of opens up the zipper. You can look through, and it's really green on the inside, like a dark green. He's like, come on in. He didn't say it, but he's kind of gesturing.
Sure. You always follow the gnome.
Got to.
Yeah, got to. They're going to show you some
What
cool
else you gonna do?
shit.
It's boring outside.
Yeah. You don't tell the gnome, like, nah, I'll be back there. You follow the gnome.
So, I mean, it takes me a while to step all the way through the zipper door. And once I get there, I'm like in this spiritual world. And there's gnomes running around.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, what the fuck, man? This is really weird. I'm like, I am in, like, the spirit world right now. I'm like, if I'm in the spirit world, where's God? So I start looking for God. Like,
Did he show up?
he did.
Good.
Yeah. And we're in the mountains.
Mm-hmm.
And he pops up behind a mountain, and I look at him, and he kind of like sneaks away. Keeps popping up. I finally get a good look at him, and it's me. Yeah.
Great wisdom.
Yeah. And during the whole thing, I had like this recurring visual of me trying to take spirituality and stuff it in the same box I had put religion in, or a similar box. And once I realized that you can't do that, it was like it pops out of the box, and I realized that spirituality is everything. You know, it's everything. And so I was like, and you can't understand it all. You can't rationalize it.
But you found out where to look for it.
Yeah.
Right in your heart.
Right inside. And once I made that, I made this whole realization there. And that's something I've actually intellectualized before and had discussions about, but I never really accepted it. And I got to accept it. Once I accepted that, I got to relive, like, from the beginning of time. I got to experience, like, biological evolution from, like, the amoeba to a human. All right? And I come up to a point where I'm an Incan, like 500 years ago, and the Spaniards show up. And I have like this experience where I'm like, it's like I know in my mind this is a Spaniard conquistador in my mind, but in the Incan mind, I'm thinking this is a god.
Quetzalcoatl has arisen.
And then the conquistador stabs me, and I die. And then when I die, I come back, and I see Jesus Christ. And I get to see him carry the cross and die on the cross. And it gets blurred between who's Jesus and who's me. And he feels sadness that, like, he tried to do something good, but he can't save everybody, is the sadness. He dies. I die. I don't know. Then I become a Japanese warrior. And I'm in charge of this town. And when I come in and fully embrace this Japanese warrior, I'm in meditation in my room, and I have, my sword sheathed. And I get up from meditation, and I just know that the enemy is coming. And I walk out, and I talk to everybody in town. And I'm talking to all the warriors in town, and I'm like the leader. And I'm saying, hey, some of us are going to die. We're going to mourn your death, all that kind of stuff. Get prepared. They're coming. And moments after I speak, they do come. And they kill the entire town. And they walk up to me, and they slit my throat. And I watch myself die. And I experience the sadness of not being enough. And my intent going in to that ceremony was to feel like I'm not enough. Because that's something I'd been struggling with, was trying to be enough, and constantly doing everything I can to be enough. And I got to realize that no matter what, I'm not going to be enough. And the worst iteration of not being enough is your entire culture being wiped out.
Sure.
And then you being wiped out, and knowing that that's gone. And after that, I got some peace. And got to enjoy the music the rest of the night. Yeah. So I only had to die a few times to get there, but
Ayahuasca has an amazing way of taking you through your deepest fears. And once you've seen and lived your deepest fears, like a horror movie that you've watched 100 times, it's no longer going to make you jump. You're no longer scared of those deepest, darkest fears. And all of those things that you experience, maybe it was you, maybe it wasn't, but it's part of the morphic field of all man. Like we carry that inside us. We carry us the triumphant warrior. We carry the oppressor. We carry the liberator. We carry the failed warrior. We carry all of these things within us. And they're all archetypes for our own life that we experience over and over again. And ayahuasca will take you to the ones that scare the shit out of you the most and say, are you okay with this? How about this? Are you okay with this? Oh, how about this? Are you okay with this?
Yeah.
Until you say like, you know what, I am okay with that.
Yeah, I think I have like this passion for helping people, and I want to help everybody, and when I can't, it's heartbreaking.
Sure.
And I think I can accept that I will die not having helped everybody, but I'm going to still die doing it.
And instead of looking at that as not enough, you look at that as enough.
It's enough, and I've just got to pass the torch on when it's time to pass it on. We just got to do the next iteration.
You do what you're capable of doing.
Yeah.
And that's it. And you can do that. That's living a life well lived, man. And instead of bringing that judge in again and judging externally what is enough or what isn't enough, being satisfied with doing what you're capable of doing.
Yeah, that was one of the big things I learned throughout the week. It actually took me days to process afterwards.
I bet.
I mean, I'm still processing, right? I mean, it was just like I was getting on my plane to come home, and I was talking to Doug about this. It's like, kind of realized that any judgment I feel from other people, I'm responsible for feeling that judgment. So that was a big release I've had over the last week is I used to like, oh, I don't give a fuck, right? That was my attitude. But that's like a workaround around not accepting, not allowing other people's judgment affect you at all. Or, not accepting that as judgment or perceived judgment.
Very cool, man. You did like the ayahuasca greatest hits. You skipped them. You skipped the middle albums that had a good song or two, and you just went for the fucking greatest hits.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome, man.
Yeah.
Night two for
I
you.
had more of a one-hit wonder. Like I had a big experience.
Yeah.
One big experience that was, the biggest experience that I've ever had, the most profound, most important thing that I've ever done. And I firmly believe that. But he had a lot more variety than I did. Like once I had that experience with my wife and my kid dying right in front of me, I was like, I did it. I'm done. That's all I fucking needed. And that's what I wanted my experience to be at that point. Like I wasn't curious to have more.
It was the completion of a cycle, and adding more to that at that point might have lessened the value of that first one. And there's a crazy wisdom in these plants, and that's why I inherently trust them way more. Like I've never done LSD. I've done just about every other plant because I did another psychedelic called 2CB, which is it's artificial. I don't know. It's some kind of chemical compound that they figured out and created. And for the I had an interesting experience. But I felt like I was in just a circus, and I'm still to this day never figured out the meaning of everything that it was.
Right.
And I just stay away from these other things because the plants, they have a spirit that's old. It really seems like
the plants carry more meaning.
And they have they have a way of knowing exactly what they need to give you. When you surrender to them in the right way, and the administrator is right, and everything is clean. The plants, the head medicine spirit of these plants will give you exactly what you need, not more, not less, and give you the opportunity at least, because you still have free will. You can resist it or whatever. They'll give you the opportunity to get exactly what you need. And whereas these other things, like if you take LSD, you're going to go somewhere. Like it has to. Like it doesn't have the same, and it could be beautiful or it could be not, but it's not going to like fucking pull the reins back,
Yeah.
I feel like the difference with ayahuasca is that there was someone there the whole time who was the teacher. Yeah. I was always in conversation the whole time. I wasn't just having an experience. Like it was like I don't want to say I was in class, but it was like I was amongst a mentor the whole time. There was someone guiding my experience with me, and that's never happened to me in any other San Pedro or mushrooms or any other entheogen. Just with ayahuasca. And I think that's what makes it so much more profound, is that I go in expecting to learn a lesson with ayahuasca, where I don't necessarily go in expecting to learn a lesson with other experiences that I've had in the same way anyway.
And maybe part of it is you setting your intent with ayahuasca. I mean, I think a lot of these plants have the ability, even marijuana, if you do it, especially eating it, like if you really set your intent, you know, a lot of these plants, the head medicine spirit of these plants will answer. You know, I think the best way it's been described to me is these plants are these massive coalesced forces in the astral. Beyond, they're way too big to be manifest as a human. It's just too much. The wisdom is too old. They're like ascended masters, you know. So embodying themselves as a human and dying and doing this whole process doesn't make sense. So they come down into creation, into manifest as plants. Like that's the thing that's most suitable, as these allies that are always there, steady, you know, wildly different and have many different facets, but that's the only way that it makes sense for them to come back into creation as allies. And when you take these plants, you get to interact with that force. And these forces are fucking awesome teachers.
Yeah, definitely got that feeling throughout the whole thing. It was like there was a wisdom being passed on. I mean, the knowledge was in me, but the wisdom was in the plant.
Well, the knowledge is in all of us because we have inside of us that we are source. We are God inside of us. And that was that lesson of that. It's like, hey, I'm looking for God. Where are you, God? Oh, it's me.
Yeah.
I carry that inside, you know? And so, of course, you know, we have all of those answers within and without us. The great mystery.
Yeah. I do like the plant medicines always seem to help me zoom out and refocus on what's truly important in life. I never get caught up when I'm having an experience on any of my external goals. Like I don't care if I win my next jiu-jitsu tournament or I hit my revenue numbers next month or I move to a certain city. Like none of that shit seems to matter. It always refocuses me on how important people are in my life.
Right.
Like in our business, I feel like it's very much my job to make sure we hit our numbers, you know, revenue-wise. If we don't hit our numbers, then
don't forget that shit. That's right. It's your job, motherfucker.
He doesn't get any more ayahuasca after this.
I'm like, I don't really care about our revenue. You're like, whoa, no more drugs for you.
I'm the only one that's not allowed to care about the revenue.
That's right. So it's good that it helps me zoom out and realize that although that certainly is important, you need to have profit in your business, or you go out of business and then the fund's over. You gotta go get a job. Like that's important. But just as oxygen to your body is the most important thing, if you don't get it, you're gonna die. It doesn't mean that the purpose of living is to breathe. Right. It's a necessity to do all the other things that are, what makes life worth living. Having awesome friends, having a family, loving the people around you. And so I had a good experience where I had the realization that even though I don't consider myself to be, quote unquote, that wealthy, like I have more fucking money than some entire cities. And like that really hit me hard. And some of those people in those cities are probably way happier than me.
Sure. And
they have a millionth of what I do in some cases. So even though money is important, and nobody would argue that, it's not what's important. Right.
Money is just energy. It's just energy that we store, and then it's stored to be released. It's stored to create. It's stored. I look at it like a battery, and it's good to fill up the battery so you have power to do stuff. You can light up a fucking house. You can do these different things. It's energy in a battery, and the goal of that, though, is not to hoard it. It's not to be like the great battery collector of all time. Like what the fuck is the purpose of that? The purpose is to store the energy in the battery so you can use it directed. So when some place is dark, you can light it. When someone is hungry, you can feed it. When you need to go somewhere and experience something, you have the resources and the time to do it. And that's, people get all twisted about money, and I think you're absolutely right. Like, I spent time in the Soweto slum in Kenya, which is one of the biggest slums in the world.
Oh, yeah, I've seen it.
And the kids there and the people there were way happier than this billionaire's birthday party I went to in Greenwich, Connecticut. Like, if you actually took like the surface level of happiness of like hedge fund managers and like on the surface, everybody's happy. Yeah, they're eating shrimp and fucking John Bon Jovi's playing and whatever. But the sadness is like palpable, whereas the other thing, there's suffering on the surface, bellies are distended, but the happiness is what's underneath. So it's like this inverse, where it's instead of this thin facade of happiness masking deep sadness, there's a thin layer of suffering, physical suffering, that pain that you talked about, that's masking a real deep joy for life. And it's not that wealthy people are unhappy. It's just they have to have a healthy relationship with that, and they have to cultivate their spiritual side and these other aspects, their family, spirituality, and just realize money is what it is.
Yeah.
It's a little but it's a slippery, dangerous little trap where you think you're feeding your belly, but it's not food. You can't digest it.
Yeah.
You know?
For us in the business, it's, money is it comes and it goes. And for me, especially if you're me, it's really big swings if it's me.
Yeah.
It'll come in a lot and it'll go out a lot. But for me, if I just take care of the team, if I just make sure that the team is living a fulfilled life, my primary goal is fulfillment, satisfaction, happiness, love. If these are things being experienced by the people on our team, then like financial success comes. And I think I'm confident that we would be more financially successful than we could have ever been focusing on the money, So it's a real joy to me to know that my job is to work on just the awakening of people on my team. That's awesome. It's the best job in the world.
I feel the same way.
Yeah.
I feel the same way. Mm-hmm. Well, shit. That's awesome. Thanks for sharing your story. Thanks for having the courage to go down there and do the work.
Thanks for having us on.
Yeah, thank you.
And it has this kind of magnifier effect because, you get to go down, have your experience, tell the story, and then, spark little seeds and plants. And for people listening, again, I can't stress enough, it's incredibly important to find the right shaman in the right situation.
Absolutely.
And drink ayahuasca in response to a calling, not a curiosity or a fancy or this compulsion. When you're called, then answer the call, but make sure you find really top level people because otherwise you can get kind of churned up a little bit in these waters.
We were walking around in Cusco and we would find these shaman shops and there's these flyers. For X amount of dollars, you can.
Yeah, don't do that for ayahuasca or tattoos.
I'm like, man, this is the vetting process. Is this flyer.
Yeah.
You just sign up and you can show up next week. We'll have a ceremony. I'm like, whoa.
Fridays at 7.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, watch
Happy
out
hour.
for that shit. That's right. When you see that shit, you should just look and envision a spider web, and you're the fucking fly.
Yeah.
Because you're gonna find yourself in the web. And
just do
someone's
your research.
gonna suck your blood.
Yeah, I think for us at some point, we have a guy who he organizes these trips, and so if you're interested, I know for us we're gonna set up something.
Yeah,
we don't know. We just got back, so we haven't really thought about logistics much. But we'll and maybe you are kind of doing the same thing. I don't know, but we want to.
Yeah, I have a couple centers that I definitely recommend. I've been getting really acquainted with the proprietor of the center called Blue Morpho, and I really trust what he's able to bring and the people that he's working with, and that's probably who I'd recommend the most right now. But there's a couple other great practitioners. Don Howard, they have a great center down there to do it. But the Blue Morpho way, they're tapped into something that I'm really, really keen on.
Okay.
It's a place of fearlessness and invincibility that they kind of tap you in and anchor to, which is really cool. It's a place where, the snakes don't bite you and the thing. It's like this mindset that you can get in that really levels incredibly well with the medicine space. So I'm just kind of exploring that now, but that's for me the place that I would recommend. But there's a couple other good ones for sure.
Yeah, we're gonna probably find a few resources and then at some point make it as well known as we possibly can.
Yeah,
as safely as possible.
We'll pool our thoughts there and we'll provide some because there's a huge demand, and with that there's going to become people who are going to take advantage of that. And so making sure that you get with the right people is good. And there's new great shamans that are being developed. I just met a shaman that just reached Maestro a couple months ago, and he was fucking badass. And it's cool to see the good shamans teaching other good shamans.
I've also heard this is you want to find a shaman and stick with them for a while. You don't want to stay shaman shopping forever.
If you find a good one, and that really works for you, you guys had amazing experiences. You guys had quintessential, the ayahuasca experiences. I'd stay. Yeah, why risk it? You know, it's like, you know, you may find that I'm by nature a seeker and explorer, and I like experimenting with that.
Right.
You know, and I'm blessed with having a couple good options. So I've kind of continued the quest, but I'd say, yeah, if you find someone good and it's really resonating with you like it has with you guys, stick with it.
We had nothing but good experience.
For ayahuasca, I think the guy's name is Javier Riguero. Is that how you say his last name?
Mm-hmm.
Something like that.
Riguero. But he was awesome for ayahuasca. But I am interested in trying maybe Don Howard for the Wachuma.
It's something when you get these people who have these 30-year relationships with these plants. You know, every time it just goes a little deeper. It goes a little deeper. You know, get in there in the 3,000 ceremony level, and they're like, they're buddies. They hang out with the plants it's like their homie.
These guys go out for months at a time, and they'll do the medicine like every other day.
Yeah.
And basically just eat enough food to keep them alive. So the guy that we worked with had done 5 months before on dieta, and it was basically every other day ayahuasca for 5 months.
Talking with the plants.
And yeah, if you don't know ayahuasca by the end of that, I don't know what you can do.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Well, that's awesome. How can people keep up with you guys? What's the way they can follow you here?
Go to barbellshrugged.com, sign up for our newsletter, and we're always blasting out new stuff. And if you're an entrepreneur, we have barbellbusiness.com as well.
Cool.
And we're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all that stuff.
Doing the thing.
If you just find Barbell Shrugged, it'll branch out, and you can check out what we got going on.
Beautiful. Thank you again, my friends. Looking forward to hanging this weekend.
Aubrey.
Yeah. Peace. See you, everybody.